Thank you very much. So, good afternoon. I hope you had a good lunch. Before we start, let's get some familiarity. Who is here from Germany? Remember that. Who is here from Australia? Woo, Australia. Who is here from Israel? Okay. Who is here from Canada? Good stuff. So I'll tell you why I'm saying that. So my name is Yoram Eshel. Up until about 4.5 years ago, I was the head of global supply chain and logistics of Teva Pharmaceuticals, the largest generic company in the world. And I was in charge of all the Teva logistic operations, so I'm coming from the pharma world. And my vision was actually to bring all the knowledge, the experience, the understanding of the pharmaceutical world into the medical cannabis world. So you may understand that if you go back 4.5 years ago, a lot of people, a lot of you were busy around licenses and cultivation and production, but nobody really thought about logistics. But I started to talk with people about import, export, cannabis, whatever. Nobody really understood what is going on. So since then, we did 65,000 kilos of cannabis to and from many, many countries, and we will talk about that a little bit. So this is all about myself. A few words about Cannabilog. So we are acting in many countries around the world. We're doing a lot of logistics and import and export, Canada, US, Uruguay, Colombia, Mexico, countries in Africa like Uganda, Lesotho, South Africa, many countries in Europe, UK, and some others. You can see here, we're doing about 70-80% of all the Israeli import and export, and we're doing a lot in Australia, New Zealand, and so on. And the best thing here in this slide is our new partnership with the QCS. QCS is a German company specializing in pharmaceuticals, but also in cannabis. They have 15 offices around Germany, and in 2 offices we're doing a lot of cannabis operation, which is in Berlin and Frankfurt. So welcome QCS, welcome Oliver, thank you very much. So we will talk today about a few things, okay? We'll try to understand what happened in the last year. And I'm saying try to understand because I'm sure that we will be able to understand everything. Then we will talk about the regulatory maze, what's going on around the world. Then we will talk about how to maintain quality and integrity. And in the end, we will talk about do and don't when you go to cannabis logistics. So when we talk about cannabis logistics, as you can see here, we have 6 major challenges. The first one is the regulatory compliance. Remember I asked you who is from Australia? Who is from Australia? So they're sitting back there. Later, after my presentation, please hug them, kiss them, because starting this Saturday, they're going to have new regulations. And I'm not sure that everybody understands the regulations. Germany as well. You heard a lot of presentation this morning about what's going on in Germany. Not sure that everybody understands it. This is one of the major challenges to try to understand what are the right regulations. And surprisingly enough, you will see written regulations, but in practice, it works differently. So there's not necessarily a connection between what is written in the regulation and what is practically working. The second thing is around quality assurance. Guys, medical cannabis is a medicine. All the government in the world will consider it as a medicine. Leave aside the Canadian guys that understand that there is what we call adult use or recreational use, many names. Just in Canada. All the rest of the world, it's medical cannabis. Now, maybe change in the future. And if it's medical cannabis in a medicine, and if it's a medicine, you have to adhere to all the pharmaceutical regulations, no matter what. None of the governments, beside Canada, will allow you to do anything unless it's medical. Sorry, there is a slide there, expertise. You better know what you do, okay? In cannabis, you ship it nicely, you export it, you arrive to the destination country. If you cannot clear it, you can kiss it goodbye. It will go to destruction, and you will pay for the destruction. So there's no way back. If you don't do the right thing, and you don't use the right methods, it's not going to work. Security. not less important. There are some countries that we are not even moving one leaf or one flower unless we have armed escort. Some countries, we don't need that. But security is an important point, and we will talk about loss prevention as well. On-time delivery, very, very important. We're talking about sensitive cargo. We're talking about temperature control. If you delayed somewhere for a few days, you may lose the whole thing. So you better understand the procedures. And the last thing is global. Yes, most of the cannabis today was more or less in country, right? Canada was a big market. Nobody even thought about export. Now, everybody wants to export. So being global, understand what's going on, will open you new markets for sure. So some news. New regulations in Australia, we were just talking about that, okay? Very unclear. They're going to change in this Saturday whether it goes with bulk products or packed products or what exactly they will get GACP or they will get just EU GMP or they have some agreements with some countries, not clear. New opportunities in Thailand, I don't want to talk about it. A lot of people are talking about Thailand. At that point of life, just forget it. It's not legal to import into Thailand, and there's no government. Maybe they'll change the rules. A lot of import into Thailand, not legal. So if you want to do non-legal stuff, okay, but be careful with that. Well, new EU facilities. We see more and more EU GMP facilities in Portugal, in Malta, some other places, good stuff. Industry challenges in Canada. We all know what's going on in Canada. Israel is facing the same thing. Some companies are closed, some companies are merged, some companies do acquisition. Be aware that you know what's going on in the market. Legalization in Germany, I'm not going to talk about it. In Israel, they are considering to change the rules. And additional European market. Where are the markets? Besides Germany, a little bit UK, a little bit Switzerland, we want to see the markets developing. So let's talk about regulations. What I did here is I just copied. You Google cannabis, legal cannabis or legal medical cannabis, so you will find a lot of maps. A map like this. This is the left side is the recreational, the right side is the medical. And you will find a map like this. And if you keep Googling it, you will find more maps. If you think that there is any connection between the maps, you're wrong. And the reason, and the main point I'm trying to take here, is make sure, because the regulations are ever changing. What you know today will not be there tomorrow. And there are many examples for that. So when you talk about regulations, make sure that you understand the right picture, the current right picture, and not a lot of stories, because the maps are not telling the truth. There's a lot of changes. Same things when it comes to Europe. Can someone explain me what is legal and what is not legal and what is the recreation in Europe? Medical, which countries? Is Europe looks like this? Is Europe looks like this? Again, regulations are changing. You have to make sure that you fully understand where it's legal and where it's not legal. Okay, I'll talk later on 2 words about CBD. I'm talking here about medical cannabis that contain THC. Be careful with that. Another thing that we need to understand, that according to the UN, the UN from a resolution from 1961, forced each country that want to regulate cannabis to have a specific unit in their government to deal with cannabis. So this is just an example of all those authorized, regulators, if I can call it this way. These are the guys that you will get all the licenses that you need to grow, to store, to manufacture, to whatever, and also the import and export permits. Each one of those guys has his own procedures, his own documents, his own application, and each one of them will take different time. Some of these guys will issue you an import permit or an export permit in 2 days. Some of them it will take 6 weeks, okay? So you better understand which one of the guys of those regulatory agencies you are dealing with, what are the procedures, how you can speed it up, and each country is different. Remember, medical cannabis is a pharmaceutical product, but it's not the same. Every country has its own regulations all around the world. Another thing that we have to talk about is the type of products. We in Cannabilog, we are moving all those type of products. It can be genetics, it can be seeds, it can be tissue cultures, it can be cuttings or clones, which is a completely different thing. I don't know if you know, but when you ship a clone, unrooted clone, it has a life expectancy of 3-4 days. After 3-4 days, if it doesn't get into the water, it's dying. So we have a very, very strict protocol how to ship clones or cuttings or tissue cultures. Otherwise, you cannot do it. So each one of those products will have a specific solution or specific logistics solution, but also in terms of licensing, in terms of import regulations and export regulations. Some countries you have to involve the Ministry of Agriculture, not just the Ministry of Health. A lot of issues to understand. Dried flowers, APIs, I call it APIs because from the pharma, I mean extracts, okay? Packed finished goods, cannabis products, herbal medicines, CBD products, we'll talk about it in a minute, it's smokable product. Each one of these guys will have, these types will have a different logistic solution and a different regulations that you need to adhere to. And again, if you are in the business, you have to understand it and you have to prepare for it. And not just shipping it out. Cannabis is not t-shirts from Turkey. It's not, okay, I have 2 pallets on my ramp, just ship it. It doesn't work this way. GDP adherence. GDP is the good distribution practices, something that goes together with quality. So first of all, pharma standards. This is it. If you're dealing with medical cannabis, you are a pharmaceutical product. You like it, you don't like it, this is it. Remember, it's an agricultural product. It's not chemical derived pharmaceuticals as we are used to, which create a lot of issues. This is why you will need COVs, this is why you will need laboratory tests, you will need a lot of things just in order to ship it out. Product integrity along the distribution chain. Eliminate temperature excursions. I will talk about that in a minute. At the end of the day, at the end of the logistic chain, there is a QP. QP is a qualified person that have to release the product into the market. These guys, I don't know if you know, but the QP in Europe is the most, get the most high salary in the industry because these guys have criminal responsibility. When they clear a product to the market, they have criminal responsibility. They will never clear it until they will see the whole tests and the data logger and everything is correct. Otherwise, they will not clear it to the market. Very, very important. A lot of regulations are country-specific. Full temperature control processes, thermal covers, special qualified packages, data loggers, exactly as the pharma. If you ship it without it, you cannot clear it. If you don't have a data logger, if you don't have the temperature records, nobody in Europe will clear it. It will approve the release to the market. This is it. It's a medical product. Sorry, and the last thing was make sure that you understand your customer acceptance or rejection criteria. Sometimes it's not on the country level, but it's your customer that will tell you, I need this and this test, or I needed this laboratory reports, or whatever the case is. Because if they have an acceptance procedure and you don't follow it, they will not approve the product. You know when? When it arrives to their facility. Then it's too late. So make sure that you know your customer criteria to reject or to accept your products. So it's not just the country level, it's also your customer. This is just a schematic chart, how we ship cannabis. We collect it with a temperature control truck. We bring it to the airport, to a temperature control chamber. We take it to the aircraft in a temperature control environment. Fly in, take off, then land on the other side, same exact thing. Keep it in the chamber, in the temperature control chamber. Use a temperature control truck to deliver it, and so on and so forth. If you are not maintaining the logistic chain as it shows here, probably you will have a temperature excursion and the product cannot be released. Simple as that. So there are many issues around that, like stability data, like all kind of arrangements. But in the end of the day, if your process, your logistic process is not qualified, and it's not, and all, by the way, all the logistic partners has to be qualified, the trucking company, the custom broker, the airline, or whatever you're using, then this will not happen. And if it not happen, products will not be released to the market. Security and loss prevention, I also already spoke about that, to make sure that you understand that you have to protect the products. You can protect it in many, many ways, the packaging, anti-tampering kinds of packaging. Very, very important, secure transportation. By the way, some countries will give specific license to the trucking company, otherwise they cannot carry cannabis. And it has to be sealed, and it has to have GPS, and it has to have a lot of issues when you carry cannabis, even in a van or in a truck. Then tampering avoidance, I spoke about that. Online trackers. There are many, many types of, we call it data loggers, right? I'm talking about temperature trackers. There are many types of them. My recommendation is to put one data logger for each pallet or for each package that you ship. Two of them has to be online. The online data loggers will give you two advantages that you don't have on the regular one. First, it will give you the location. You will know where it is because it's a GPS system, so you know where it is. You know if there is a delay or whatever. And the second thing, which is most important, is you know if there is a temperature excursion. Some of the loggers will give you an alert before the excursion, right? If it's 15 to 25 and all the cannabis products are being shipped between 15 to 25 Celsius degrees, so I don't need the alert when it's 26. I need the alert when it's 24, right? So in order to avoid it, you can get alerts from these online data loggers. This is my recommendation, and they are available in the market. The other data loggers, a lot of people will call it USB data loggers. I call them post-mortem data loggers. You know why post-mortem? Because you read it at the end. As my son says, what was. Nothing you can do about it, right? You see the temperature excursion, but you cannot do anything with that. It's already done. But if you use an online data logger, you can eliminate the excursion even before it happens. Very important. And the last thing is something that we provide as well. It's a very unique insurance coverage for the whole transportation door-to-door process. You know that receiving or getting insurance for cannabis, it's a little bit problematic, but we have a very unique insurance policy that covers all risks for that. Let's talk a little bit about the process. So you know that the cannabis export starts from the import side. So if you have to issue an import license on the destination country, and then based on that, you have to issue an export permit on the other side. This is the way it works. This is how narcotics in general is working. Each side will take different time and will require different information. But without the export permit and the import permit, there's no way you can ship. By the way, none of the airlines will carry cannabis shipments unless you have licenses. It's a prerequisite. The airlines will check it. By the way, not all the airlines are carrying cannabis, just few of them. But if they do, they will ask for your licenses. You cannot avoid this process, and it takes time. Sometimes it's sweat, not just the time, but it is a very important process. And one thing you have to really understand is that the information on the licenses has to be identical. If the import license is not exactly as the export, if the export license is not exactly as the import license, it's not going to work. So before, in our company, we have a procedure that even before we pick up a leaf or a flower or whatever, we take the documents, we send them to the other side, like in Germany or in any other country. They check it, they approve it, and just then we will collect the freight or the cargo or the shipments and we'll ship it out. Don't ship unless you make sure that you can clear it on the other side. Because if it's not going to work, you lost it. So a little bit about the physical logistics. So first of all, we spoke about the documents, we spoke about the packaging. You have to understand that in cannabis shipments, few agencies will be involved. In the US, it will be the DEA, Customs, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, FDA, a lot of agencies, and you have to adhere to that. Almost every cannabis shipment will go through physical check, either in the exportation side or the importation side, which means it will take time, and it may even cost more money because of storage and everything. So be ready for that. Almost every shipment will be physically examined. In some countries, like Australia, it will be quarantine. You will need to quarantine the shipment for a few days before you can clear it into the market. So all those aspects has to be considered before you ship out. Of course, GDP regulations, and there's something that you have to understand. There is a strict requirement that you control all your supply chain. So it's not good enough that you ship it out and you export it. You have to control the whole way until it will arrive to the other side. This is the way your regulators want to see how you control your logistic chain. And this is a requirement. It's not a nice to have, it's a must. And we were talking about online traceability. A few words about CBD. So first of all, CBD products. Again, we need to talk about definitions. Okay, so we recognize 6, I would say, types of CBD products. The first one is a medical product. You know, there are 2 products in the world, that's it. The Epidiolex and the Sativex, that's it. That's the only finished product. They were approved by FDA, and they can be considered as medicines. Then we have the food and drinks. You know, all the edibles that we're talking about. Then we have the food additives, vitamins, novel food. Novel food. Who is from the UK here? Novel food? Come on, okay? Anyway, so each country, even within Europe, well, UK is not Europe anymore, right? But anyway, each country is taking a different definition for CBD food supplements. So what are we going to do with that? Some will be vitamins, some will be additives, whatever. Just to show you, remember the map from before, how we can manage that. Then we have veterinary products, very good products. If you have a dog that's barking too much, CBD products, put him to sleep perfectly. Really, there are many products like that. Then cosmetics. Cosmetics, right? Creams, things like that. There's a lot of products in the market. Not each country will accept it. And the last thing is smokable products. You know, there are cigarettes, CBD cigarettes as well, which is kind of funny, right? People want to get high, but they're still smoking CBD. But the most important here is the top, when I said, be careful with claims with CBD products, especially if you're in the US. In the US, if you're claiming that your product is, anti-aging or curing something or whatever, FDA will run after you. You cannot claim any scientific benefit or therapeutic benefit from your CBD product. And the reason is there's no proof. So be careful with that. Governments doesn't like that. And at the bottom, you can see again, Europe, right? Different countries, different level of THC, different regulatory requirements, kind of a mess. Yet again, that's what I'm saying. Even in CBD, which is not narcotics, there's still things that you need to know. And again, this is a little bit another map. Remember, the map is not important because tomorrow it will be different. That's the message. It will be different. So that's almost my last slide about do and don'ts. The first thing is about licenses, import-export regulation, and basic licenses. If you have customers, sellers, or buyers, you have to make sure that they understand the procedures. We found ourselves sometimes teaching, again, sorry for the example in Canada, teaching Canadian companies, which are great growers of cannabis, how to be exporters in Canada, because they never had the experience. They have a very big local market, never exported. So things like that. Seller certification, okay? In some countries, EU GMP is a requirement, COMCS, GACP, IQC, all kinds of letters that I'm not sure that everybody understands them, but it's a requirement. So the seller certification, it's according to the buyer regulations. And if it doesn't have EU GMP, you cannot import it. And by the way, a lot of people you will meet will tell you, yeah, we have EU GMP, we're in the process, we have an audit in 2 weeks. If it doesn't show on the Eurodora website, it's not EU GMP. Okay, so stories we know, but facts, this is what should be considered. Import-export permit, I spoke about it. Quality, again, laboratory test, COVs, a lot of requirements around it. Everything has to be risk-based. You have to do a risk analysis and risk mitigation for each of your lanes. So if you are importing from Uruguay or from Canada, or you ship to Australia, every lane has to be analyzed. You have to analyze the risk and make sure that you mitigate it. Okay? No stories about that. Temperature excursion or an unmanaged process can actually bring into a situation that your project will be rejected. Security along the whole journey, dedicated insurance coverage, packages, labels, temperature loggers, everything has to be precise. The requirements for labels in Israel are not the same as the requirements of labels in Germany. But if the labels on the bag or on the box are not according to the country specific, it's not going to work. This is why, if you come to us, we will ask to see pictures of the labels even before we pick it up. So if the labels are not correct, forget it. And one more thing, labels has to be printed. Canadians, don't write it down in your handwriting. Print it, okay? Import-export practical procedure. I said before, it's not always the formal version, okay? I can tell you from our experience that we had a shipment from Canada, and the Canadian guys didn't pack the bags correctly. We delivered the shipment to the airline Saturday evening. It was shipment to Israel. Saturday evening, we delivered it to the airline, and there was a lot of smell. And the airline said, we're not going to carry it. We're afraid that the passengers and the pilots will get high. Okay, really, real story. So we had to take it back. By the way, I don't know if you know, there is anti-smell bags. So we had to put bags all around the shipment, and then we send it back. Real story. Sometimes you don't even think about it. So please, when you're putting stuff in bags, make sure that you heat seal it and not staple it. Okay? Heat sealed, by the way, twice. This is our procedure. And if you're doing Ziploc, heat seal the bottom and then the Ziploc and not the other way around. So make sure that you're doing the right thing in order to make sure that it arrives safely. Plan your flights carefully. Whoever shipped to Israel, we have a very weird procedure in Israel. You can clear cannabis products just on Tuesdays between 10 to 12. That's it. That's the law. Now, if you come on Tuesday evening, you have to wait a week. Don't ask me why, that's the procedure. So what we do is in advance, we pick it up on Fridays, we fly it in on Saturday, on Sunday, make sure that we have it on Monday, and then we clear it. So make sure that you understand. Another point, don't ever, never, ever, ever land on US soil. Okay? Never, ever. Sometimes you don't know that the airline, even very sophisticated non-airline like the German airlines, without names, will land in the US without even that you know that. Kiss it goodbye. It will be confiscated. Okay? So make sure that you are not landing, even not by mistake, on US soil. That's it. That's the way it works. So plan your flights carefully, not just in order of timing, but also in the route. And, as I said before, Don't ever ship unless you make sure that you can clear it on the other side. Don't ship if you cannot clear it on the other side. There's no way back. So now I'm open to questions. Thank you very much.